I should have known the day my coffee machine blew a fuse. My whole life would short-circuit. But hindsight's 20/20, and I was too busy running Parish Electric to notice the warning signs flickering right in front of me. My name is James Parish, and for 20 years I've been fixing other people's electrical problems while my own marriage slowly burned out. 42 years old, 2 teenage daughters who think I'm embarrassing, and a wife who used to laugh at my terrible electrician jokes. Used to being the operative phrase. The morning everything changed started like any other Tuesday in our Pacific Northwest town. Rain drummed against the windows of our 2-story colonial, the kind of steady drizzle that makes you grateful for a warm house and hot coffee. Beth was already dressed for work, looking polished in that way she'd perfected over the years. Sharp blazer, perfect makeup, not a hair out of place. "Don't forget Bree has soccer practice tonight," she said without looking up from her phone, thumbs flying across the screen. "And Bew needs a ride to Sarah's house after school." "Got it," I replied, wrestling with the coffee machine that had been acting up all week. The display flickered, went dark, then came back to life with a weak gurgle. "This thing's on its last legs." Beth glanced up briefly. "Then fix it. You're an electrician." There was something in her tone, a dismissiveness that had crept in over the past few months, like I was just the maintenance guy who happened to live in her house. "Late night at the office again?" I asked, nodding toward her laptop bag. She'd been working longer hours lately, coming home after the girls were already in bed. "Big project with a new client. Julian Ashford's design firm landed a major contract and we're handling all the HR integration." She grabbed her coffee mug, barely touching the brew I'd made. "Don't wait up." Julian Ashford. The name had been coming up a lot lately. Beth worked as head of HR for a trendy design firm downtown, and apparently this Julian guy was some hotshot they were collaborating with. From the way Beth talked about him, you'd think he invented architecture. "Maybe I should meet this Julian sometime," I said, trying to keep it light. "Sounds like you two are practically joined at the hip with this project." Beth's fingers stilled on her phone screen for just a moment. "It's just business, James. You wouldn't understand the complexities." The complexities. Right. Because running a family electrical contracting business with my brother John was apparently simple compared to whatever Beth did in her climate-controlled office. After she left, I sat in the quiet kitchen, listening to the coffee machine's strained, rattling noise and thinking about how complicated things had become. 20 years of marriage, and somewhere along the way we'd stopped being partners and turned into roommates who shared a mortgage and 2 kids. The drive to Parish Electric took me through the older part of town, where my grandfather had started the business back in 1952. 3 generations of parish men had kept the lights on in this community, and I was proud of that legacy, even if Beth seemed to view it as beneath her lately. John was already at the office when I arrived, leaning against his pristine BMW and talking on his phone. My older brother had always been the golden boy, charismatic, smooth-talking, the kind of guy who could sell ice to penguins. Where I was practical and straightforward, John was all charm and ambition. "Morning, little brother," he called out as I parked my work truck. "Ready for another day of keeping the world illuminated?" "Someone has to do the real work while you schmooze clients," I shot back. But there was no heat in it. This was our routine, the same playful rivalry we'd maintained since childhood. Inside, our office manager Mary was already fielding calls and organizing the day's work orders. Mary had been with us for 15 years, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who kept both John and me in line. "Morning, James. Your 9 o'clock appointment called to reschedule, and we got 3 emergency calls already. Looks like yesterday's storm knocked out power to half the industrial district." "Great. Nothing like starting the day with crisis management." I poured myself another cup of coffee from the office pot, which somehow tasted better than anything my worn-out machine at home could produce. John appeared at my shoulder, studying the work orders. "I'll take the residential calls. You handle the industrial stuff. You're better with the heavy machinery anyway." It was true, and I appreciated that he recognized it. Despite our different personalities, John and I made a good team. He handled the client relations and business development while I focused on the technical side and crew management. The morning flew by in a blur of service calls and repair work. There's something satisfying about diagnosing an electrical problem and fixing it. Unlike human relationships, electrical systems follow logical rules. When something's wrong, you can trace the issue back to its source and repair it. Around noon, I stopped by the house to grab lunch and check on that temperamental coffee machine. The place was empty, Beth at work, girls at school, so I had the rare luxury of eating a sandwich in complete silence. That's when I noticed Beth's work laptop sitting open on the kitchen counter. She must have forgotten it in her rush to leave. Beth was usually meticulous about her work equipment, always packing everything into her leather messenger bag with military precision. Seeing the laptop abandoned on the counter was like finding a neat freak's closet in disarray, completely out of character. The screen was still active, showing her email inbox. I wasn't trying to snoop, just planning to close it and maybe text her about picking it up. But as I reached for the lid, a new message notification popped up in the corner of the screen. Julian Ashford. The subject line made my stomach drop. Can't wait for tonight. I should have closed the laptop right then. Should have respected my wife's privacy and minded my own business. But something about that subject line, combined with all those late nights and dismissive comments, made me pause. One click. That's all it took to open Pandora's box. Can't wait for tonight. Sarah's working late again, so we'll have the condo to ourselves. I keep thinking about yesterday afternoon and how incredible you felt. The words hit me like grabbing a live wire. My hands started shaking as I scrolled through the email thread, each message worse than the last. 6 months of correspondence between my wife and Julian Ashford, starting professional and gradually becoming intimate, then explicit. I meant what I said about leaving Sarah, Julian had written 3 weeks ago. Soon, Beth. I promise it'll be soon. We just need to be patient a little longer. Soon. The word appeared 47 times across 6 months of emails. I know because I counted, sitting there in my kitchen while my marriage crumbled around me like a house with faulty wiring. The most recent exchange was from this morning, sent after Beth left for work. Julian. Last night was amazing. I can still taste you. Beth. I can't keep doing this behind James's back much longer. When are you going to tell Sarah? Julian. Soon, baby. Very soon. I just need to handle some financial arrangements first. Sarah's got her claws in half my assets, but my lawyer says we can minimize the damage if we're strategic. Beth. I'm tired of being your secret. I want to be with you properly, not sneaking around like teenagers. Julian. You will be. I promise. Soon we'll have everything we want. Each other, the business partnership, freedom from our current situations. Trust me. I sat there staring at the screen, my sandwich forgotten, trying to process what I was reading. This wasn't just an affair, it was a calculated plan to dismantle 2 marriages for some twisted version of happily ever after. My phone buzzed with a text from Beth. Forgot my laptop. Can you bring it to the office? The audacity was breathtaking. She wanted me to deliver the evidence of her betrayal right to her workplace, where she was probably planning another rendezvous with Julian. Instead, I opened a new browser window and started taking screenshots. Every email, every photo Julian had sent, every promise and lie and intimate detail. I saved everything to 3 separate drives, timestamped each file, and organized them into folders labeled with dates and subjects. 20 years of marriage, and I'd become an archivist of my own humiliation. But as I worked, something shifted inside me. The initial shock and hurt began crystallizing into something harder, more focused. Beth and Julian thought they were so clever, planning their future while keeping their spouses in the dark. They thought they held all the cards. They were about to learn that assumptions can be dangerous, especially when dealing with someone who understands how circuits work. I picked up my phone and dialed information. I need the number for Julian Ashford in the downtown area, I told the operator. Business or residential? Residential. The phone rang 3 times before a woman answered. Her voice was crisp, professional, with the kind of confidence that comes from years of dealing with important matters. Ashford residence, Vivian speaking. Mrs. Ashford, my name is James Parish. I think we need to talk. There was a pause. I'm sorry, I don't recognize the name. Are you calling about Julian's business? In a way, yes. Your husband has been having an affair with my wife for the past 6 months. I have documentation if you're interested in seeing it. The silence stretched so long I thought she might have hung up. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady as steel. Mr. Parish, I appreciate you calling. Would it be possible for you to email me this documentation? Absolutely. I can send it right now if you give me your email address. She rattled off a Gmail account, and I could hear her writing something in the background. Mr. Parish, I want you to know that I'm not entirely surprised by this call. Julian has been different lately, secretive. I had my suspicions. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Don't be. I'd rather know the truth than live a lie. Send me everything you have. I'll be in touch. After hanging up, I composed an email to Vivian Ashford with all the evidence attached. Then I created another email account and sent an anonymous complaint to Julian's company's HR department, including every workplace misconduct violation I could document from the email exchanges. By the time I finished, it was nearly 2 o'clock. I had to get back to work, but first I sent Beth a text. Something came up with an emergency call. Can't bring the laptop. You'll have to manage without it today. Her response was immediate. James, I really need it. This is important. Sorry, work emergency takes priority. I could practically feel her frustration through the phone screen, but I had bigger concerns than Beth's inconvenience, like figuring out how to tell my daughters that their mother was a cheater and their family was about to implode. The afternoon crawled by as I tried to focus on work while my personal life collapsed in the background. Every time my phone buzzed, I expected it to be Beth demanding her laptop or Julian's wife calling with questions. Instead, it was just the usual stream of work-related messages and client calls. Around 4 o'clock, Mary knocked on my office door. James, you've got a visitor. Says it's personal. Vivian Ashford stood in our lobby like she owned the place. Mid-40s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of bearing that suggested she was used to being the smartest person in the room. She looked like the type of woman who could dismantle a man's life with a smile and a handshake. Mr. Parish, thank you for agreeing to see me. Please call me James. And thank you for coming down here instead of calling. Some conversations are better handled face-to-face. We sat in my office, and she pulled out a tablet loaded with the emails I'd sent her. I've been going through everything you shared. Very thorough documentation. I wanted to make sure you had the complete picture. Oh, I do, and I've already taken action. My attorney filed divorce papers an hour ago. They should be arriving at Julian's office right about now. The thought of Julian getting served with divorce papers at work made me smile for the first time all day. That was fast. I don't believe in wasting time once I've made a decision. I also forwarded your evidence to his company's board of directors. Julian's been using company resources for personal matters, which violates several clauses in his employment contract. You work fast. 22 years of marriage to a man like Julian teaches you to be prepared for anything. She leaned back in her chair, studying me with sharp eyes. The question is, what are you planning to do about your wife? It was a fair question, and one I'd been wrestling with all afternoon. I'm still figuring that out. May I offer some advice? Please? Don't let emotion cloud your judgment. This isn't about revenge. It's about protecting your interests and your children. Document everything, secure your assets, and stay one step ahead of whatever they're planning next. Ah, you think they're planning something else? Vivian's smile was razor sharp. Julian's emails mentioned financial arrangements and business partnerships. Men like him don't leave marriages without an exit strategy. He's been planning this for months, maybe longer. The implications hit me like a circuit overload. You think Beth's been helping him plan? I think your wife is more involved in this than just being the other woman. The tone of her email suggests someone who's thinking long-term, not just having a fling. After Vivian left, I sat in my office trying to process everything. My marriage was over. That much was clear. But according to Julian's wife, this went deeper than simple adultery. Beth and Julian weren't just having an affair, they were planning a future together, which meant they'd been calculating how to extract themselves from their current lives with maximum benefit. The thought made me angry, but it also clarified my priorities. If Beth wanted to play strategic games, I could play too. But first, I needed to secure my position. I spent the next hour on the phone with my bank, moving liquid assets from joint accounts into a trust I'd established years ago for the girls' college funds. It was perfectly legal. The trust had been set up with both our signatures, and I was the designated administrator. By the time I finished, Beth and Julian's access to our joint resources was effectively frozen. If they wanted to start their new life together, they'd have to do it on their own dime. My phone rang as I was packing up to leave. Unknown number. James Parish. Mr. Parish, this is Detective Morrison with the downtown precinct. I'm calling about a disturbance at the Ashford residence. Your name came up as someone who might have information. My stomach clenched. What kind of disturbance? Domestic dispute. No one was hurt, but Mr. Ashford was quite upset about some legal documents he received today. His wife mentioned you might have context about their marital situation. I spoke with Mrs. Ashford earlier about her husband's affair with my wife. I provided her with evidence, and she said she was filing for divorce. I see. Well, Mr. Ashford seems to think you've somehow orchestrated a conspiracy against him. He's making threats about lawsuits and harassment charges. Detective, I documented my wife's affair and informed the other betrayed spouse. That's not harassment, that's transparency. I agree, Mr. Parish. Just wanted to give you a heads up that Mr. Ashford is pretty worked up. You might want to be careful for the next few days. After hanging up, I realized the day's events were probably just the beginning. Julian was clearly the type of man who didn't handle losing control very well, and now he'd lost his wife, his marriage, and potentially his job all in the span of a few hours. The drive home felt surreal. This morning I'd been a married man with a stable family life. Tonight I was going home to confront my cheating wife and figure out how to tell my teenage daughters that their world was about to change forever. Beth's car was already in the driveway when I pulled up. Through the kitchen window, I could see her pacing back and forth, phone pressed to her ear, probably talking to Julian, trying to figure out how their perfect plan had gone sideways so quickly. I sat in my truck for a moment, gathering my courage. 20 years of marriage deserved better than this, but I couldn't change what Beth had chosen. I could only control my response. The front door opened before I reached it. Beth stood there, her professional composure cracked, makeup smudged, looking more rattled than I'd seen her in years. "James, we need to talk. We need to talk." 4 words that every married man dreads, especially when his wife looks like she's been crying in her car for an hour. I followed Beth into our living room, the same space where we'd celebrated Christmas mornings and birthday parties, where we'd argued about household budgets and planned family vacations. Now it felt like a courtroom, with both of us preparing for battle. "I know you went through my laptop," she said without preamble. "Julian told me what happened at his office today. The divorce papers, the HR investigation, the board meeting. Very thorough, James." "You left it open on the kitchen counter. The notifications were right there." "So you decided to play detective instead of talking to me like an adult?" The audacity was breathtaking. "Talk to you like you talked to me before starting an affair with Julian? Like you talked to me before planning to leave our marriage for another man?" Beth sat down heavily on the couch, her hands shaking slightly. "It's not what you think." "Really? Because what I think is that my wife has been having an affair for 6 months, making plans to leave me for her boss, and lying to my face every single day. Please enlighten me about what I'm missing." "Julian and I, it just happened. We didn't plan it." I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots I'd saved. "Can't wait for tonight. I can still taste you. When are you going to tell Sarah? Soon, baby. Very soon." I looked up at her. "Which part just happened, Beth? The affair or the elaborate planning to destroy 2 marriages?" She flinched at hearing her own words read back to her. "You had no right to involve Vivian. That was between Julian and his wife." "Just like your affair was between you and Julian? Funny how that logic works." I sat down across from her, maintaining distance. "Tell me something. When exactly were you planning to let me know? After Julian left his wife? After you'd figured out how to maximize your financial gain from our divorce? It's not about money." "Then explain the part where Julian talks about financial arrangements and minimizing damage from his divorce. Explain the business partnership he mentions. Explain why a woman who claims to love someone else is still living in my house, sleeping in my bed, and pretending to be my wife." Beth was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she finally looked up, there was something different in her expression. Resignation, maybe, or relief at not having to maintain the pretense anymore. "I was going to tell you next month. Julian's lawyer said the timing would be better after his divorce was finalized." "More strategic that way? More fair to everyone involved?" "Fair." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You know what would have been fair, Beth? Talking to me 6 months ago when you first realized you were unhappy. Giving me a chance to work on our marriage before you started working on Julian. Would it have mattered? When's the last time we had a real conversation, James? When's the last time you looked up from your work long enough to notice that I was disappearing?" It was a fair question, and it stung because there was truth in it. We had grown apart over the years, settling into routines that prioritized responsibilities over connection, but that didn't justify what she'd done. "So this is my fault? I worked too much, so you decided to have an affair?" "I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying we both let this marriage die a long time ago. Julian just helped me realize I deserved something better." "Something better." I repeated the words, tasting their bitterness. "And what exactly does Julian offer that 20 years of marriage and 2 children couldn't?" Beth's face softened slightly, taking on the dreamy expression I'd seen in her emails. "He sees me, James. He thinks I'm brilliant and beautiful and worth fighting for. When's the last time you made me feel like that? When's the last time you gave me the chance? You've been distant and cold for months, Beth. Every conversation feels like a business transaction. Every suggestion I make gets shot down. You act like I'm some kind of burden you have to tolerate." "Because that's what this became. This house, this routine, this life, it all became a burden. Do you know what it's like to feel invisible in your own marriage?" "Actually, yes, I do. Because while you were feeling invisible, I was watching my wife slip away and not understanding why. I was trying to connect with someone who was already gone." The front door slammed, followed by the sound of backpacks hitting the floor. Bew and Bree were home from school, their voices carrying from the entryway as they argued about whose turn it was to empty the dishwasher. Beth and I looked at each other, both realizing that our private confrontation was about to become a family crisis. "We can't tell them tonight," Beth whispered urgently. "They have school tomorrow, and Bree has that math test she's been worried about." "When exactly do you suggest we tell them? After you've moved in with Julian? After they find out from their friends that their mother is dating their father's business rival?" "Julian's not your business rival. He is now." Bew appeared in the doorway, still wearing her soccer uniform, grass stains on her knees and her hair escaping from its ponytail. At 15, she was starting to look more like Beth every day, but she had my stubborn streak and my talent for reading people. "Hey, Dad, Mom." She glanced between us, her expression shifting from casual to concerned. "Everything okay? You both look weird." "Just discussing some work stuff," Beth said quickly, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Bew's gaze sharpened. She'd inherited my ability to spot electrical problems, but she'd also inherited Beth's talent for detecting emotional undercurrents. "Work stuff that makes Mom look like she's been crying." "I'm fine, honey. Just tired." "Uh-huh." Bew looked at me. "Dad, you look like someone stole your truck." Despite everything, I almost smiled. My daughter had a gift for cutting through nonsense. "It's been a long day, kiddo. How was school?" "Boring. Coach says I might make varsity next year if I keep improving my footwork." "Oh, and Sarah's mom said she can drive me to the game Friday if you can't make it." "I'll be there," I promised, realizing that I had no idea what my schedule would look like by Friday. Would I still be living in this house? Would Beth be gone? Would the girls be shuttling between two homes? Bree joined us, 13 and perpetually hungry, already raiding the kitchen for snacks. "What's for dinner? I'm starving, and we don't have any good food." "We have plenty of food," Beth said. "You just don't want to eat anything that requires actual preparation." "Can we get pizza?" Bree asked hopefully. "Pizza sounds good," I said, pulling out my phone. "The usual?" As I ordered dinner, I watched Beth interact with our daughters, noting how she seemed to be memorizing their faces. Was she planning to take them with her when she left? Did Julian's vision of their future include 2 teenage stepchildren? The thought of my girls living with Julian Ashford made my chest tighten. From what I'd read in the emails, he was charming and manipulative, the kind of man who would present himself as the perfect stepfather while systematically undermining their relationship with me. After dinner, Beth retreated to our bedroom while I helped the girls with homework. Bew was struggling with a chemistry assignment, and I found myself explaining electrical conductivity and resistance, drawing parallels between circuits and chemical reactions. "It's all about the path of least resistance," I told her, sketching diagrams on scratch paper. "Electricity always finds the easiest way to complete the circuit. Sometimes that means going around obstacles, sometimes it means building up enough charge to jump across gaps." "Like lightning?" "Exactly like lightning. Sometimes the buildup of potential energy becomes so great that it has to discharge, regardless of the consequences." Bew studied the diagram thoughtfully. "What happens to the thing that gets struck by lightning?" "Depends on what it is. Sometimes it gets destroyed, sometimes it just gets a little scorched but survives. And sometimes," I added, thinking about my own situation, "it gets energized in a way that changes everything." Later that evening, after the girls had gone to bed, Beth and I found ourselves back in the living room. The house felt different now, charged with unspoken tension and the weight of impending change. "I'm going to pack some things," Beth said quietly. "I'll stay at my sister's for a few days while we figure out the logistics." "What about the girls?" "They should stay here with you. This is their home and they need stability right now." It was the first reasonable thing she'd said all day, and I was grateful for it. "When are you going to tell them?" "This weekend, maybe. Give me a few days to process everything." "Process what, Beth?" "You've had 6 months to process. The only thing that's changed is that you got caught." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Julian's wife kicked him out. He's staying at a hotel downtown." "Good for her." "James, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but Julian's a good man. He's not the villain you want him to be. He's a married man who seduced my wife and convinced her to betray her family. What exactly would you call that?" "I call it 2 people who found something real in the middle of complicated situations." "Complicated situations that he helped create. You realize that, right? Julian pursued a married woman, lied to his own wife for months, and used his position of authority to start an inappropriate relationship with someone in his professional network. None of that happened by accident." Beth stood up, smoothing her skirt with hands that trembled slightly. "I'm going to pack now." "Beth." She turned back to me. "Why didn't you just ask for a divorce 6 months ago? Why the affair? Why the deception? For a moment, her carefully constructed composure cracked, and I saw something raw and vulnerable in her expression. Because I was scared, she admitted. Scared of hurting you and the girls. Scared of being alone. Scared of making a mistake. She paused. Julian made me feel brave. And now? Now I don't have a choice anymore. The secret's out, and we have to deal with the consequences. After she went upstairs, I sat alone in the living room, listening to the sounds of my wife packing her things. 20 years of shared life being sorted into boxes and suitcases, reduced to decisions about what was worth taking and what could be left behind. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Vivian Ashford. Julian was fired this afternoon. His company is also investigating potential misuse of client funds. Thought you should know. I stared at the message, feeling a grim satisfaction. Julian's day had gone from bad to worse, and it was only going to get more complicated from here. A man who'd built his life on charm and manipulation wasn't going to handle professional humiliation gracefully. Another text arrived. Be careful, James. Men like Julian don't accept responsibility for their failures. They look for someone to blame. The warning proved prescient. Around 11 o'clock, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone rang. Julian Ashford's name appeared on the caller ID. You've got some nerve calling my house, I answered. James, we need to talk. Man to man. I think we're past the point of civilized conversation, Julian. Look, I know you're upset about Beth, but destroying my marriage and my career isn't going to fix yours. What do you want? Money? I can write you a check. The offer was so insulting that I almost hung up. You think this is about money? Isn't it always? Come on, James. You're a working-class guy with a small business and a mortgage. I'm offering you a way out of this mess that benefits everyone. Everyone except your wife and my children, you mean? Vivian will be fine. She's got family money and a law degree, and your kids will adjust. Kids are resilient. Let me explain something to you, Julian. This isn't about money or revenge or anything else you might understand. This is about consequences. You made choices, and now you get to live with them. We both made choices, James. Beth chose me. She's been choosing me for 6 months. You can't force someone to love you. The words hit their target, but I kept my voice steady. You're right. I can't force Beth to love me, but I can make sure that when she chooses you, she does it honestly, without lies or deception or financial manipulation. I can make sure that everyone involved knows exactly what kind of man they're dealing with. You sanctimonious piece of... Julian caught himself, but the mask had slipped. You have no idea what you've done. I had everything under control, and you've ruined it all. Everything under control. Is that what you call lying to your wife and manipulating my wife into an affair? Control? Beth wanted this as much as I did. More, even. She's the one who started talking about leaving you. She's the one who said she couldn't stand living a lie anymore. And you, being such a good friend, offered to help her with that problem. I offered her something better than what she had. Can you say the same? The line went quiet as I considered his question. Could I offer Beth something better? Had I ever really tried, or had I just assumed that 20 years of marriage was enough to coast on? Julian, let me ask you something. When this all shakes out, when the divorces are final and the dust settles, what exactly do you think you'll have? You'll have a woman who cheated on her husband, and she'll have a man who cheated on his wife. You'll both know exactly what the other is capable of when things get difficult. That's different. What Beth and I have is real. What you have is a fantasy built on deception and stolen moments. Real relationships are built on trust and honesty and working through problems together. You know, all the things you both avoided by having an affair instead of dealing with your marriages like adults. I hung up before he could respond, but his words echoed in my mind. Beth chose me. She's been choosing me for 6 months. It was true, and it hurt more than I wanted to admit. My wife hadn't been seduced or manipulated into an affair. She'd made a conscious, ongoing choice to betray our marriage and our family. Julian might have offered her an escape route, but she'd been the one to take it. Upstairs, I could hear Beth moving around in our bedroom, the soft sounds of drawers opening and closing, hangers sliding across rods, the mundane sounds of a marriage ending. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the laptop that had started this whole mess. Tomorrow, Beth would be gone, and I'd have to figure out how to explain to my daughters why their mother had moved out. I'd have to decide whether to fight for a marriage that was already over or focus on protecting what was left of our family. But tonight, I just sat in my kitchen, listening to my wife pack, and tried to figure out where 20 years of love had gone so wrong. The house felt different already, like the foundation had shifted slightly, making everything familiar seem unstable. By this time tomorrow, Beth would be gone, and Julian would be unemployed and divorced, and two families would be dealing with the wreckage of choices made in hotel rooms and stolen afternoons. I thought about what Vivian Ashford had said about staying one step ahead, about not letting emotion cloud judgment. Good advice, but easier said than done when your entire life was being rewired without your consent. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Beth. "I'm sorry, James. I never wanted it to happen this way." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. "But you did want it to happen." She didn't reply. I woke up Thursday morning to the sound of silence. No shower running, no coffee brewing, no Beth moving through her morning routine with military precision. Just the rain against the windows and the house settling around me like it was adjusting to the absence. Beth's note was on the kitchen counter, propped against the broken coffee machine like a final insult. "Gone to Linda's. We'll call the girls tonight. We need to discuss next steps." B. Next steps. Like our marriage was a project that needed proper closure documentation. The girls took the news about as well as expected. Bew went quiet and focused, throwing herself into getting ready for school with the kind of determined efficiency that meant she was processing. Bree asked a dozen questions I couldn't answer, then declared the whole situation totally unfair before stomping upstairs to finish her math homework. "Is Mom coming back?" Bew asked as I drove them to school. "I don't know, kiddo. We're still figuring things out." "But you guys are getting divorced, right? I mean, people don't just move out for no reason." I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. 15 years old and already too smart for comfortable lies. "Probably, yeah." "Because of that Julian guy?" My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "How do you know about Julian?" "Mom's been talking about him for months. Julian this, Julian that. Plus she's been acting weird, staying late at work, always on her phone." Bew shrugged. "I'm not stupid, Dad." "No, you're not. And yes, Julian is part of the reason your mom left." "Is he married too?" "He was. His wife filed for divorce yesterday." Bew absorbed this information with the same analytical approach she brought to her chemistry homework. "So they both cheated?" "Yeah." "That's really messed up." "Yeah, it is." After dropping the girls off, I drove to the office with my head spinning. 24 hours ago, I'd been a married man with typical marital problems. Now I was a single father trying to figure out how to rebuild my life while protecting my daughters from the fallout of their mother's choices. Mary took one look at me and poured a cup of coffee without being asked. "Rough night?" "Beth left. She's been having an affair." Mary's expression didn't change, but she nodded slowly. "I wondered. She's been different lately when she calls the office. Distant." "You knew?" "I suspected. 25 years of marriage teaches you to recognize the signs." She handed me the coffee and sat down across from my desk. "What do you need?" "I need to make sure the business is protected. If Beth tries to claim half of Parish Electric in the divorce, it could destroy everything Dad and Grandpa built." "Your brother know about this?" "Not yet. I'll tell him when he gets in." Mary nodded. "James, I'm going to say something, and I want you to hear it. Beth leaving might be the best thing that could happen to you." The comment surprised me. Mary had always been polite to Beth, professional during their interactions. "She never appreciated what you built here," Mary continued. "Always acted like the business was beneath her, like you should be doing something more important with your life. A good wife supports her husband's work, especially when it's honest work that provides for the family." "We grew apart over the years. I wasn't perfect either." "Maybe not. But you didn't cheat. You didn't lie. You didn't abandon your family for someone else." Mary stood up. "Don't you dare take responsibility for her choices, James Parish. You're a good man, and you deserve better." John arrived an hour later, breezing through the office with his usual confident energy. He stopped short when he saw my expression. "You look terrible. What happened?" I told him everything, the laptop, the emails, Beth leaving, Julian's firing, the whole mess. John listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious with each detail. "Holy hell, James, I'm sorry. I had no idea things were that bad with you and Beth." "Neither did I, apparently." "What can I do?" "Help me protect the business. If this divorce gets ugly, Beth might try to claim half of everything. I need to make sure Parish Electric stays in the Parish family." John nodded grimly. "I'll call our lawyer today. We'll figure out how to restructure things if necessary." He paused. "You know, I never liked Julian Ashford. Met him at a Chamber of Commerce event last year. Slick talker, but something about him felt off." "Well, your instincts were right." "What about the girls?" "They're staying with me. Beth agreed to that much, at least." "Good. They need stability right now, and you're the stable one in this situation." The morning was interrupted by a call from Bu's school. She'd gotten into an argument with a classmate who'd made a comment about broken homes and had been sent to the principal's office. I left John to handle the work calls and drove to Roosevelt High, where I found my daughter sitting in the administrative office looking defiant and miserable. She said kids from divorced families always have problems, Bu explained as we walked to my truck. She said I'd probably start acting out and getting bad grades because that's what happens when parents split up. What did you say back? I told her that was a stupid stereotype and that plenty of kids from intact families are screwed up too. Then I might have mentioned that her parents being married doesn't make up for the fact that she's failing chemistry. Despite everything, I had to admire my daughter's logic. Bu, I understand you're angry about the situation with your mom, but you can't take it out on other people. I'm not angry at Mom. I'm angry at people who think they know everything about my life based on one fact. Fair enough. But next time someone says something ignorant, maybe just walk away instead of engaging. Did you walk away when Julian called last night? I glanced at her sharply. You heard that? I heard you on the phone with someone and you sounded really angry. Was that him? Yeah, that was him. What did he want? To blame me for the consequences of his own actions. Did you hang up on him? Eventually, Bu smiled for the first time in 2 days. Good. That afternoon, I got a call from Vivian Ashford. Julian's ex-wife had information that changed everything. James, I need to show you something. Can you meet me for coffee? We met at a small cafe downtown, away from both our usual haunts. Vivian looked composed as always, but there was an edge to her demeanor that suggested she'd discovered something significant. Julian's been planning this for longer than either of us realized, she said, sliding a folder across the table. I found these documents in his home office. The folder contained bank statements, real estate documents, and what appeared to be a business plan. As I read through them, the scope of Julian's deception became clear. He's been moving money out of our joint accounts for 8 months, Vivian explained. Small amounts at first, then larger transfers to an account I'd never seen before. And look at this. She pointed to a business proposal dated 4 months ago. Ashford-Parish Design Consulting. He was planning to start a company with Beth, using money from both our marriages to fund it. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just an affair. It was a calculated plan to use our marriages as venture capital for their new life together. There's more, Vivian continued. Julian's been in contact with several of your biggest clients, trying to poach them for this new company. He was planning to leave his current job anyway, but getting fired just accelerated his timeline. I stared at the documents, trying to process the magnitude of what Beth and Julian had planned. They weren't just leaving their spouses, they were stealing from us to fund their future together. What do you want to do about this? I asked. I want to make sure they don't get away with it. Julian thinks he's smarter than everyone else, but he's left a paper trail that proves fraud and theft. I'm turning this over to my attorney, and I think you should do the same. This will destroy them both. They were planning to destroy us. The only difference is that we found out before they could finish the job. That evening, I sat down with Bu and Bree to explain the situation as honestly as I could without overwhelming them with adult complexities. Your mom and I are getting divorced, I told them. She's been involved with someone else, and we can't work through it. The Julian guy, Bree said matter-of-factly. Yes. Is she going to marry him? Bu asked. I don't know. Maybe. Do we have to live with him? No. You'll live here with me. Your mom will have visitation rights, but this is your home. Bree looked relieved, but Bu seemed troubled. Dad, is Mom a bad person now? It was the hardest question she could have asked, because I didn't have a simple answer. Your mom made some bad choices, but that doesn't make her a bad person. She's still your mother, and she loves you both. Sometimes adults make mistakes that hurt the people they care about. Big mistakes, Bree added. Yeah, kiddo, big mistakes. Later that night, after the girls were in bed, I called my sister Connie. She was a family law attorney in Seattle, and I needed professional advice I could trust. James, I'm so sorry. I never saw this coming. Neither did I. But I need your help. This is more complicated than just adultery. I explained about the business plan, the hidden accounts, Julian's client poaching attempts. Connie listened without interrupting, occasionally asking for clarification. This is fraud, she said finally. Possibly embezzlement, depending on how Julian accessed the funds he's been moving. And if he's been using his current employer's resources to poach clients for a competing business, that's a breach of fiduciary duty. What does that mean for the divorce? It means Beth picked the wrong partner in crime. Julian's actions expose both of them to criminal liability, not just civil penalties. If I were representing Beth, I'd be advising her to distance herself from Julian as quickly as possible. Will she listen to advice like that? Depends on how deep she's in and how much she really knows about Julian's financial maneuvering. She might be a victim too, James? Some of these men are very good at manipulation. I wanted to believe that Beth had been manipulated, that she wasn't fully aware of Julian's plans. But the emails I'd read suggested someone who was actively participating in decisions about their future together. What's my next move? Document everything. Secure your assets. File for divorce immediately and include fraud claims against both of them. And James, don't try to protect Beth from the consequences of her choices. She's an adult who made calculated decisions. Let her deal with the fallout. Friday morning brought news that Julian's situation had deteriorated further. Mary handed me a newspaper article about his former company launching an internal investigation into client account irregularities. Looks like Julian's problems are just beginning, she observed. Good. Maybe Beth will start to realize what kind of man she tied herself to. But when Beth called that afternoon to talk to the girls, she sounded more defiant than chastened. I heard about Julian's work situation, I said after Bew and Bree had finished their conversations with her. It's all political nonsense. His former partners are trying to destroy his reputation because they're threatened by his talent. Beth, he was stealing from clients to fund your business plan. That's not true. Julian would never steal anything. I've seen the documents. Vivian found bank records, business plans, client lists. Your boyfriend was planning to use money from both our marriages to start a company with you. There was a long pause. I don't know what you're talking about. The Ashford-Parish Design Consulting business plan, dated 4 months ago. Your name is on it as co-founder. Another pause, longer this time. Julian mentioned some ideas about working together, but nothing concrete. Certainly nothing involving stolen money. Beth, he's been moving funds out of his joint accounts with Vivian for 8 months. He's been contacting our clients to poach them for this new company. He's been planning this whole thing while lying to both our faces. You're just trying to turn me against him because you can't accept that I chose someone else. The conversation ended with Beth hanging up on me, but I could hear the doubt creeping into her voice. Maybe Connie was right. Maybe Beth was as much a victim of Julian's manipulation as Vivian and I were. Or maybe she was just a very good actress who'd gotten caught in a scheme that was more elaborate than she'd expected. Either way, the weekend was going to be interesting. Julian was unemployed, divorced, and facing potential criminal charges. Beth was staying with her sister, probably getting an earful about the wisdom of leaving her family for a man who was rapidly becoming radioactive. And I was home with my daughters, trying to figure out how to build a new life from the wreckage of the old one. The house felt different without Beth's presence, but not necessarily worse. Quieter, maybe. More honest. The girls and I had pizza for dinner and watched a movie together, something we hadn't done as a family in months. Dad, Bree said as I tucked her into bed, are you sad about Mom leaving? Yeah, kiddo, I'm sad, but I'm also proud of how you and your sister are handling everything. Are you going to be okay? We're all going to be okay. It might take some time and things will be different, but we're going to be fine. Good, because I like living with just you. You don't get mad about dishes in the sink. I laughed despite myself. Don't get used to it. I still expect you to clean up after yourself. I know, but you're not mean about it like Mom gets sometimes. After the girls were asleep, I sat in my kitchen with a beer and Beth's abandoned laptop, scrolling through the evidence of her betrayal one more time. Tomorrow I'd file for divorce and start the legal process of untangling 20 years of shared life. But tonight, I just wanted to understand how we'd gotten here. When had Beth stopped seeing me as a partner and started seeing me as an obstacle? When had I stopped paying attention to the signs that she was slipping away? The answers were probably in those emails somewhere, buried between the explicit messages and the planning sessions for their new life together. But I wasn't sure I wanted to dig that deep into the autopsy of my marriage. Some things were better left buried, especially when you had to focus on what came next instead of what went wrong. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Julian. We need to meet. There are things about Beth you don't know. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Whatever Julian wanted to tell me about my wife could wait. I had more important things to worry about than the manipulations of a desperate man trying to save himself, like figuring out how to be the father my daughters needed during the most difficult time in their young lives, like protecting the business my family had built over 3 generations, like learning how to be alone again after 20 years of marriage. The storm outside was getting worse, rain lashing against the windows and wind rattling the shutters, but inside, the house felt solid and secure, like it was built to weather whatever came next. I finished my beer and headed upstairs, checking on the girls one more time before going to bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new revelations, new complications in the mess that my life had become. But tonight, my daughters were safe under my roof, and that was enough.